They laughed when Earth walked out. Not just one species. Not one ambassador. The entire Galactic Council chamber filled with clicking, hissing, buzzing laughter as the Terran delegate stood in silence, unblinking, unbothered, unreadable. Then he left without a word. No counter-proposal? Scoffed the Jundari representative. No plea for assistance? Chirped the Zealothi diplomat, her feathers vibrating in amusement. They always were dramatic, someone muttered. Primitive, posturing things. And for 7 days, the council kept laughing until Earth went dark. Not politically literally sol blacked. Out from every network trade ceased. Messages bounced. Probes lost signal on approach. Then the stars around Earth started flickering. Not dying. Sci-Fi ing.avd spike at first. The council assumed it was sabotage. Jamming fields, said the Valak. Commander. They're bluffing. Some clever cloaking stunt. But the systems weren't jammed. They were. Repelled. Every satellite, every drone, every AI observer was ejected from Sol's gravity like Earth had become allergic to being watched. Then came the footage, unlabeled, undeniable. A single Terran ship, drifting near the Helios barrier. It wasn't fast. It wasn't glowing. It wasn't broadcasting. A challenge. It simply rotated once, and an entire asteroid belt changed shape. No weapon fired. No command issued. Just physics. Obeying. Impossible, the Jundari tech advisor whispered. That kind of manipulation would require. The Terran signal broke through. Clean and emotionless. You measured us by what we let you see. Tactical turn-in, a panic session behind closed doors. Council leaders met. There's no way they have this level of tech, barked the Threxel admiral. They begged us for aid 3 cycles ago. They didn't beg, said a quiet voice from the back. It was General Andrus. Old, retired, half forgotten. They reported casualties. We mistook it for begging. Silence. He stepped forward. Humans don't scream when they lose. They wait. And when they stop waiting, you freeze, he said. Because by then, they're not responding. They're remembering. Back on Earth, beneath the Atlantic, a chamber lit for the first time in a generation. A Terran officer stood before 12 dormant capsules, black, unmarked. They pulsed once. Then opened. The officer didn't issue orders. She whispered a single phrase, phase echo. Across 5 systems, no alarms blared. No fleets deployed, and still, civilizations began evacuating. At the next emergency summit, the Galactic Council didn't mock. They watched in frozen silence as a final message. Played one no one remembered recording. A Terran voice. Calm. Measured. Cold. We didn't walk away. Because we were weak. We walked away to give you time to realize we weren't. And that was before Earth even responded. They thought it was mercy. It wasn't. The Jundari called for a vote, standard protocol. Emergency Measure Zeta-14. Full embargo on Terran systems. All Council-aligned species would cut off resource trade. AI sync access and comes infrastructure. The motion passed in 8 minutes. But by the 9th minute, half their border systems were offline. Not bomb. Unplugged. Power grids didn't fail. They rerouted. Entire energy pathways flicked from Council-authorized cores. Back toward Earth. Rewritten. Repurposed. They hadn't even known. Earth had the clearance keys. A VD Spike Counselor Vrel hissed from his post on the far rim satellite. They're stealing our infrastructure. No, said the data analyst beside him. They're taking back what they designed. Silence. You're saying this is Terran-made? The analyst stared at the screen where ancient protocols codes. No one used in centuries reactivated in perfect harmony. We thought they begged us for help. Turns out we were running their leftovers. They gave us tech to watch them, and built it so they could watch us back. On the fringes of the Council's tech ring, Lights blinked into a new pattern. Not distress, not war. A rhythm, one pulse every 7 seconds. Earth's heart, and it was beating again. Tactical turn. The Zealothy fleet launched first. Always impulsive. Always loud. 70-2 dreadnoughts, hyperspace jumping into Terran space. Broadcasting. Surrender terms before they even saw the system. They didn't reach orbit. The ships didn't explode. They stalled. Powerless. Floating. Somehow. Reversed. Spinning back through their own flight path like a glitch in time. Like Earth had rewound them. One captain managed to scream into the comms before his voice looped into silence. They're not stopping us. They're recording us. Psychological hook inside Council Command. The delegation sat in a chamber built to withstand full planetary strikes. No one was speaking now. Just watching as their own ships went dark on the feed. One by one, some of them were crying. The oldest delegate, a crystalline creature who once called humans cute and chaotic, stared at her trembling fingers. I thought they were slow, she whispered. They were, someone said, on purpose. Emotional flip back on Earth in a quiet hallway. Lined with glass panels, 2 officers stood looking at an old satellite blueprint. You think they'll retaliate? One asked. The other just stared out at the sky. They already did, she said. Then why aren't we launching? Because they don't need to fear our war. She tapped the glass once. They need to remember our patience. The Galactic Council had mocked Earth, and now they were whispering prayers in silence. ChatGPT sighed. The silence broke, not with an explosion. Not with a fleet, with a memory. A signal burst through council-wide comms at exactly 0,000 standard galactic time. No source, no encryption. Just a raw playback of something most hadn't seen, or had chosen to forget. A video file. Old, blurry, Terran soldiers. Young, exhausted, bloody, dragging civilians out of a burning off-world settlement. Not theirs. A council colony. One the council had written off as UNSALVAGEABLE. In the background, a Jundari transport ship could be seen leaving, abandoning them. The humans stayed. They carried strangers through fire, then disappeared. A VD spike. Now. It played, on repeat, in every chamber, on every council world. A message overlaid the footage after 5 loops. You left them. We didn't. And for the first time since Earth fell silent, someone asked out loud, are we the villains in their story? No one answered. Because in every silence there was an echo. And the echo said yes. Tactical turn, a massive meeting of the Council Defense Network was called. This is psychological warfare, the Valek strategist insisted. We must show strength. Deploy Armada Deltas present, visible, immediate. The Threxel High Marshal folded her arms. Present fleets vanish faster. They won't this time. They will, she said, because they'll be noticed. What does that mean? It means every time we try to show force, Earth doesn't stop us. She paused. They lets us look at ourselves doing it. The room went still. One diplomat from the outer belts whispered, when did humans learn how to make us ashamed? No one knew, because that was the real weapon. Emotional flip. Commander Carter stood in a memory vault far beneath the Terran. Southern Pole. No guards. No codes. Just old air and old names. She brushed a thin layer of dust from a plaque that read, Solace Division. Lost but not silent. Tell me they know, she said softly. Behind her, the station AI flickered. There. Beginning to. She placed one hand over a row of names. Good, she whispered. Let them. Psychological hook across council space. Something new began to happen. Not war. Not rebellion. Regret. Commanders deactivated their fleets on their own. Senators pulled funding from weapon research. One planet even lowered. its planetary defense shields, not out of surrender, out of guilt, because the Terrans hadn't returned to take revenge. They'd returned to show the galaxy what it looked like to abandon humanity when it mattered, and what it felt like when silence became a mirror. The Council's top analyst resigned. No scandal, no warning. Just a message left on her terminal. You didn't lose control, you gave it away. One joke at a time. The file ended with a timestamp 20 years prior. A clip. A recording of a council session where a Terran envoy stood silently for 6 minutes as alien diplomats laughed, mocked, and dismissed his report on Sol's defensive blackout capabilities. 1 minute later, they rejected Earth's formal offer to share new shielding tech. 1 year later, that same tech was detected in every Terran warship, 30 times stronger. A VD spike in the present. 6 Council vessels attempted a diplomatic flyby of Earth's outer perimeter. No weapons. No COMS. Just light signal flares. Ancient, peaceful protocol. They weren't shot down. They were redirected. The space around Earth bent, not warped. Not torn. It folded, like hands closing a book. The ships found themselves not destroyed, but staring at their own launch footage on their bridge screens. One pilot fainted, another screamed, because it meant Earth had filmed them before they even left. Tactical turn in a classified council meeting. Admiral Torak slammed his fist into the war table. They're humiliating us without firing a single shot. General Vex turned slowly, then stopped giving them ammunition. We're losing face. You lost that the day you laughed at them for trying diplomacy. The room fell quiet. An aide spoke up. What if this isn't war? What is it? Then, Torak growled. Justice, she said. And no one disagreed. Emotional flip on Earth. Children were taught a new subject in school. Galactic memory. They didn't learn how to fight. They learned how to listen. One young boy raised his hand and asked, Are we scary? The teacher paused. We're not scary, she said. We're unforgettable. Psychological hook alone. Council archivist, once proud of documenting Terran behavior as erratic and amusing, now sat surrounded by unsent reports. Every report started the same. We didn't understand them. But none of them ended, because now she did. The Galactic Council had mocked Earth, and Earth didn't retaliate with violence. They responded with a mirror, and the galaxy could no longer look away. The void around Sol no longer pulsed with silence. It had med. Not a threat, not a weapon. Just resonance, a low frequency that didn't vibrate your ears, it vibrated your regret. From the Council's mid-ring observatory, diplomats watched a singular Terran artifact drift across their long range. Scanners. A satellite. Ancient, cracked, barely functional. It wasn't transmitting a message. It was the message, burned into its frame. In a language dead before most species discovered electricity were 5 words. We waited. You turned away. Counselor Vrel paced across the floor of the emergency chamber. They're not asking for reparations. They're not even speaking, hissed Threxel. Exactly, said the Valak tactician. They're showing. The lights dimmed. A new data stream lit the air between them. Ship logs, civilian logs, private archives, Terran soldiers ferrying food to colonies not even their own, Terran doctors performing surgeries in alien plague zones without vaccines, Terran miners reinforcing collapsing tunnels for empires that tax their people dry. Every act recorded, every moment buried, now laid bare. They were documenting the times we failed them, someone whispered, and they never said a word. They waited until we were the ones ashamed. Tactical turn, the Council authorized. A non-military envoy to Earth, not a diplomat. A historian. He arrived in orbit. No escort, no weapons. Just humility. The Earth didn't stop him, didn't welcome him either. His shuttle drifted until gravity anchored it toward a Terran vessel, the Solace Eternal. It didn't look like a warship. It looked like a monument. Inside, he found nothing but quiet halls and screens, hundreds. Each looping a single moment, a Terran helping a stranger, bleeding, staying. The historian dropped to his knees. This is what we laughed at, he said. In the core of council leadership, a vote was held. Not on defense, on confession. They debated openly for once. The Jundari offered public apology protocols. The Zelafi proposed tribute worlds. The Valak wanted memorial fleets built in Earth's honor. But Earth sent back only one thing, a packet of their jokes. Every insult, every meme, every slur hurled at Terrans, across decades. Archived, labeled, dated. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. You wanted to know how deep it went. Read the message. So we showed you the hole you dug. Psychological shift. The historian returned from the Solace Eternal changed. He spoke before the Grand Forum. Not with anger, not with fear. With grief. They never wanted power, he said. They wanted peace. And we mistook their silence for permission to keep mocking them. Now, the galaxy had seen what silence really was. It was a decision one Earth had made. When it realized words wouldn't work, one the Council now wished they'd understood, before it was too late. On every Council world, one line appeared. On billboards. On comms. In dreams. No transmission. No hacker. Just presence. We never stopped hearing you. You stopped hearing us. Children on Earth planted gardens again, not because the war was over, because there hadn't been one, and because in the ashes of silence, they'd finally taught the galaxy something no fleet ever could, how to listen and how to remember. They opened the vaults, not Earth's, the Council's, archives locked away for centuries, classified, redacted, buried under political language, and false states were suddenly made public. Not by hackers. Not by whistleblowers. By Earth. Whole centuries of diplomatic footage, recordings of closed-door sessions, internal messages that ended with Terran signatures. The proof was irrefutable. Earth had been listening the entire time. Not once had they spoken up, because they were never trying to convince anyone. They were waiting for the reveal. The first file played was the Council's denial of refugee status for an off-world Terran colony during the Genthic Plague. One line stood out cold and dry. Let the Terrans manage their own mess. They're used to loss. AVD Spica Council member vomited after hearing it. On 15 planets, protests began. Not against Earth, against their own governments. Students carried signs. We laughed. They remembered. One child held up a paper scribbled in charcoal. If silence is power, Earth is king. Fleet leaders tried to restore order, but nothing was functioning. Satellites rerouted. Defense systems flickered. Even the Council's emergency broadcast grid started showing only one feed, a still image of a Terran soldier carrying a Zelafi child through burning wreckage. Caption: We didn't ask for thanks. You gave us mockery. Tactical turn on the ground in Council. Territory E9, a Threxel general stood before a crowd of soldiers. The enemy hasn't fired a single shot. They don't have to, one soldier muttered. We still hold the advantage. The general barked. Someone laughed. He turned. What's so damn funny? The soldier's voice cracked. Sir, if we have the advantage, why are they the ones who never needed reinforcements? The general looked up. Above them, 7 dots appeared. Terran vessels. No weapons drawn. Just waiting. Psychological hook. Back on Earth. Gray was silent in the memorial garden. Rain tapped the glass roof like whispers no one wanted to hear. Out loud, Beside him, Mara finally spoke. "They're unraveling." He nodded. "Took long enough. You think they'll retaliate?" He looked up at the gray sky. "No, they'll reflect." She raised a brow. "Since when do they know how?" He smiled, just a little, "Because we're showing them." Emotional flip on the capital world of the Jundari Alliance, the president stepped out of his chamber to find the council plaza filled with people all silent. Some held candles. Some held photos. Most just stood with heads bowed, not in fear, in shame. President looked up at the hollow display of the Terran beacon, now glowing softly with pulses every 7 seconds. "We thought they'd scream." He turned to his advisor. "They gave us quiet, and somehow that hurts more." AVD Spike then Earth spoke, just once. A broadcast untraceable in source, unstoppable in reach. 10 words, read in a voice old and young at once. "You laughed." We didn't answer, but we never stopped recording. And the galaxy, for once in its history, did not respond with politics or war. It responded with silence. The Reconciliation Assembly fell apart in less than an hour, not because Earth interrupted it, because Earth wasn't even present. The Council had summoned every surviving species to discuss Terran silence and appropriate countermeasures. No human ships arrived. No diplomats showed, not even a drone. Instead, one delegate stood up from the Threxel sector, an elder statesman with breath-assisted lungs and 10 centuries of memory, and simply said, "They're not playing the game anymore." AVD Spike, in a chamber where voices usually echoed for hours, no one spoke after that. Until the walls themselves changed. Not physically. HOLOGRAPHEALLY. Soft glow rippled across the white stone like breath under skin, and then an image. A single frame from a war Earth never claimed. Terran medics in the mud, patching up alien enemies. Holding the dying. Crying with them. The caption faded in after 10 seconds. We lost count of how many we saved. Then it blinked out. The room remained silent for 3 minutes. One Zealothi turned to her aide and whispered, "They're reminding us of what they were, so we understand what they've chosen not to become." Tactical turn in deep orbit over Nilax Prime. A council fleet attempted a maneuver drill. Just routine, until the shadows appeared. Not ships. Outlines. Dark forms blotting the stars so still. The scanners didn't register movement. "Why aren't they firing?" one Valak captain asked. "They're not hostile." "Then what the hell are they doing?" "Watching." The word sent a chill through the bridge. "Why?" The AI paused longer than protocol allowed. Then answered, "To see if we flinch." Psychological hook on Earth. A school broadcast interrupted its normal programming. A teacher had asked the class, "What does it mean to win a war?" One child raised her hand and replied, "It means making the other side wish they'd never started it." The teacher blinked. "Is that what Earth did?" "No," the girl said. "We made them wish they'd listened." Emotional flip back. In the Council's private archives, another leak hit the networks. A message from a Terran scout forgotten, 30 years old, never declassified. Voice trembling, yet calm. "We offered them everything. Blueprints, culture, songs." They laughed. "That's fine." A pause. "But if we go quiet, and they're still laughing, tell them this." The voice sharpened, crystal clear. "Silence is not peace. It's preparation." Signature line. The stars above the Council's Grand Plaza blinked. All at once. Not naturally. Time. 7 stars flicked once, then back on. Every Terran survivor knew what it meant. Old code. Echo complete. Memory stored. Response unnecessary. AVD Spike on the Valak homeworld. The Minister of Defense met with his war council. "We must prepare retaliation," he declared. "For what?" someone asked. "They've dismantled our influence. No battles fought. They've collapsed morale. No strikes launched. Then what do you suggest we call this? He shouted. And Aide Young, shaking, looked up and answered, Judgment. The minister went quiet, and in that pause, for the first time, he understood this wasn't a war of weapons. It was a war of witness. And Earth wasn't trying to win. They were trying to show us losing. The council tried to censor it. The feed. The quotes, the images, all of it. They shut down public networks, detained civilian broadcasters, even disconnected 6 Outer Rim relay stations. It didn't matter. The silence spread faster. Not because Earth pushed it, because no one could stop. Watching. Every screen, every window, even personal holo devices, all began flashing the same question. What did you say when they begged? No species answered. No government dared, because the truth wasn't a mystery. It was a memory. A VD spike in an abandoned colony on Luxor V. A forgotten statue stood, buried beneath vines and ash, a child, Terran and alien, hand in hand, one holding a tool, one holding a torch. The inscription read, Built together, left alone. When a patrol team found it, their commander didn't radio it in. He just stood there, helmet off, breathing like something cracked open inside his chest. Why didn't anyone tell us this was here? The recruit whispered, Because we buried. The proof, the commander replied. And then he knelt not in worship. In apology. Tactical turn above Earth's atmosphere. A rogue fleet arrived from the Crosian front, unaligned, unforgiven, out for revenge. 52 cruisers, primed for orbital bombardment. They never fired, because they didn't even finish their sentence. Their transmission began, This is Captain Urex of, and then Earth answered. Not in words. In memory. Every screen aboard the Crosian ships lit up with footage from a Crosian disaster 70 years ago, a collapsed moon facility, hundreds dying. One ship arrived in time. Human. Unarmed. And stayed through the collapse, saving hundreds, dying with the rest. The final image, a Terran engineer holding a Crosian child against his chest as the ceiling came down. No one spoke after that. The Crosian fleet turned around. Psychological hook in the dead zone between council-controlled trade routes. Hundreds of supply drones now bore a new marking. An old Earth signal. Not military. Not diplomatic. Just a circle. Open. Incomplete. A Terran mark for stories unfinished. One archivist decoded it from a human child's journal. We don't need revenge. We need memory. That line spread faster than any battle report, because it was true. Earth hadn't come back for war. They'd come back to remind the galaxy what it had tried to forget, and made sure no one could look away. Again. Emotional flip on the councils. Deepest surveillance outpost, known only as Red Eye. A technician noticed a fluctuation. Not dangerous. Just intentional. Every Terran probe that had once gone silent suddenly blinked again. Not broadcasting data. Recording it. Every planet, every fleet, every word. One tech whispered, They're archiving us. The supervisor finished the thought. The way we used to archive them. Signature line at 000 Galactic Standard Time. A single message flickered onto every council capital screen, each in its native tongue. You taught us silence was weakness. Now listen to yours. AVD spike somewhere, far from any capital, a child watched stars through a cracked dome roof. She turned to her mother and asked, Why did the humans stop talking? The mother thought for a long time, then answered, quietly, because sometimes the loudest voice is the one that's done explaining. And across the stars, Earth watched not with anger, not with fire, but with presence. And the galaxy felt small for the first time. The Council's emergency chamber, once a storm of noise and command, now echoed with something terrifying. Careful silence. Not imposed. Accepted. The Speaker of the Assembly, once known for his booming voice, stared at the screen in front of him. He hadn't blinked in minutes. A transmission had arrived from Earth. No demand. No threat. Just one video. It opened on a battlefield, but not one the Council remembered, because they were never there. It showed Terran medics crawling through radiation. Storms to reach downed enemy soldiers. It showed a group of Terran engineers repairing the engines of an alien refugee ship mid-combat. Taking fire as they worked. It showed Terrans doing what the Council never taught their own people to do, help without hesitation. And the closing line, spoken softly in the background by a human child, burned into every screen. They never had to be grateful. We just didn't want them to be alone. AVD Spike, a fleet commander on Armith Prime, resigned that day. Live. On a public broadcast. Not with disgrace, but with confession. I told my crew's humans were manipulators, he said. I showed them charts. I gave them data. He paused, throat dry. I never showed them what they did when no one was watching. He looked down. Now they are. Tactical turn. The Threxel Senate proposed a formal inquiry into every historical vote against Terran interests. Not for justice. For understanding. And when that measure passed unanimously, every planetary news channel that had once ridiculed Earth froze their broadcasts. Why? Because their archives began disappearing. Not deleted. Replaced. One by one. Every file mocking Earth was overwritten by quiet footage. A mother teaching her daughter how to read Terran language. A farmer on Mars helping a Zelaphi harvest a dying crop. An astronaut humming a lullaby to an alien infant too young to understand the tune, but comforted anyway. The data wasn't hostile. It was corrective. Psychological hook on a moon called Haleth's Wake. A retired admiral stared at the crater, where he once ordered a preemptive strike against a Terran settlement. They'd called it a precaution. Back then, it made sense, but now he knew the humans had still rebuilt that outpost and named it after the alien city it was meant to destroy. Not as an insult. As a memorial. He fell to his knees. His whisper didn't travel far, but Earth heard it anyway. I was wrong. Earth didn't answer. It didn't need to. Instead, a new beacon activated. One no species recognized. It wasn't a warning system or a broadcast. It was a mirror. Literally. A massive orbital structure reflecting the stars. And beneath it, a message blinked across space in every known language. We held up a mirror. You turned away. But now, there's nowhere else to look. Signature line on the Council's most sacred monument, untouched for millennia. One word appeared overnight, carved into its highest spire without any ship seen entering orbit. Heard. That was it. No explanation. No source. But everyone knew who left it. A VD Spike back in a darkened room on Earth. Two surviving Terran diplomats sat in silence. Not because there was nothing to say, because everything had been said. One finally asked, "Do you think they understand now?" The other sipped a cup of cold tea and shrugged. "They don't have to understand." He set it down. "They just have to remember." And somewhere across the galaxy, someone whispered, "We mocked the quiet ones." But they were listening. The silence wasn't empty. It was echo. The last message Earth sent wasn't sent at all. It was embedded, buried in quantum dust particles, laced into the folds of folded space. Not detectable by scans, not stoppable by jammers. It simply appeared across every communication network in the galaxy. A quiet screen, a countdown. No numbers. Just pulses. 3.2. 1. Then darkness. No more data. No more sound. No more Earth. Every satellite that ever pointed toward Sol returned corrupted images. Every attempt to re-establish contact failed. Every deep scan came back with the same Anomaly. There is no light. The sun was still there. But it didn't. Shined out of ED Spike in the emergency session, the council screamed, not at Earth, at themselves. What did they do? Where did they go? How did they? And over it all, a Terran AI voice decades old finally spoke aloud. Not in threat. In finality, we asked you to see us. You watched instead. Then silence. A kind that didn't wait to be. One that ended things. Tactical turn. Some believed Earth had activated a weapon, something ancient, something hidden beneath the crust of Sol for eons. Others believed they'd simply left. A mass exodus into dark space. But the most frightening theory? That Earth had merely gone quiet again, not out of fear, out of choice, because we weren't ready and they were done waiting. On a far moon near the outer edge of Velas territory, a child looked up at the black speck where Earth used to glow. Why? Isn't there sun shining? Her grandfather, eyes glassy, didn't answer at first. Then he simply whispered, because we told them light didn't matter. She frowned. And they believed us. On Mars, still outside Earth's blackout radius, the last Terran broadcast played on loop for days before the servers shut down. A girl, maybe 16, staring into the camera, smiling, but not with anger. She said one sentence, then cut to black. We stayed quiet so you could be loud. Now that you've finished, what do you hear? It wasn't a threat. It was a hand withdrawn, a presence removed, a mirror taken away. For centuries, the galaxy had used Earth as a footnote, a scapegoat, a curiosity. Now they had nothing to point at. And in that absence, every species finally faced the question they'd avoided for too long. What were we when we had them? And what are we now that they're gone? Generations later, the black patch in the sky over Sol still glowed in memory, not light. Not heat. Guild. Pilgrimages began. Monuments were raised, not for victory, for remorse. And every single one carried the same words carved at its base. We mocked the quiet. And in the end, they took their silence with them. The reapers never came, because Earth was the reaper, and they left not with fire, but with absence, the kind that never stops echoing.